Vamos a ver íntegra toda la entrevista a Phil Spencer. No hagáis caso de todos estos titulares sacados de contexto. Muchos son directamente mentiras, manipulaciones. Vamos a ver perfectamente todo lo que es la entrevista de Phil Spencer. Llega la traducción automática hasta donde llega. Sobre todo estad atento a lo que dice en inglés, porque desde luego también eso ha confundido a muchos portales y están transcribiendo tal cual lo que dice la traducción automática, que son auténticas locuras. No. Hace autocrítica, por supuesto, Phil Spencer y se mete en los temas más trascendentales que realmente preocupa al verdadero seguidor de Xbox, al que tiene el Game Pass, y está muy muy bien. Para mí todo se trata de un gran fallo logístico, absolutamente todo. Desde luego el lanzamiento del Redfall, que se habría solucionado lanzando a 60 frames por segundo el videojuego en consola, separando lo más posible, distanciando lo más posible de lo de la CMA y desde luego dándole como unos 4 o 5 meses para el estreno del videojuego. Todo eso ha provocado que dé la sensación de que el videojuego es una cacarruta o de que eso se intenta vender, ¿no? Cuando en realidad todo se podía haber solucionado así. Phil Spencer, ahora lo vamos a ver, lo achaca todo a un problema de comunicación, a un problema de que dentro de Bethesda, dentro de lo que es Arcane, alguien no hizo bien los deberes. Sobre todo el que sale más señalado es Peter Hines, el jefe de los estudios de desarrollo de Bethesda, que si no sale despedido de esta va a ser un milagro. Pero vamos ya con la entrevista porque de verdad que es interesantísima.
With Phil Spencer, it's going to be a fun time together. Phil, let's just jump right into it. And it's a tough way to start this episode. It's my birthday this week, and I didn't want to have to do it like this. But Phil, it's been a tough week in the Xbox universe. As you know, of course, the CMA kind of blocking our acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, and Redfall coming out to poor reviews at the launch. Let's start off at the top. Phil, let's talk about the CMA and, of course, this Activision Blizzard acquisition. How are you feeling about this? What should be the overall mindset for Xbox gamers when we look at this after months and months of conversation?
Mira, lo primero de todo, hablar sobre la CMA, hablar sobre la adquisición de Activision Blizzard, y aquí va a ser totalmente transparente. Por una parte está bien, desde luego nunca había visto yo mayor transparencia, pero como digo, para mí, logísticamente, es un gran error que aquí venga Phil Spencer una vez más a desgastarse.
Yeah, we remain confident. Obviously, the news from the CMA, which for those not tracking all this, is the United Kingdom's regulatory board on acquisitions to block the acquisition. We'll be appealing that. That's our plan. We continue to work with the European Union. We'll continue to work with the FTC. I think there are like 14 jurisdictions all up. We're working on approval. I think we have 9 approvals so far. But the CMA decision was disappointing. I've been talking to that group for coming up on a year. They've defined a market of cloud gaming that, in my mind, doesn't really exist yet today.
Aquí está achacando a los de la CMA, que ha estado un año entero hablando con ellos, que se ha desgastado desde luego muchísimo, y que el espacio de la nube que ha descrito la CMA, dice Phil Spencer, que en su cabeza que no existe. O sea, que desde luego se han equivocado en ese sentido.
But they have a point of view that maybe we have a lead in a market that is just forming and that this content could somehow prohibit others from competing in that market. But we'll appeal. We stay on it. The company remains very, very committed. We think Activision Blizzard King is not our strategy, but it is an accelerant for our strategy. So we're still heads down and working through regulatory.
I am pleased to
Todavía están trabajando para ver si pueden llevar adelante la compra de Activision Blizzard.
hear that, of course, as a big fan of many of those gaming franchises over there. I'm looking forward to seeing this deal go through, and I'm glad to hear that you and the team are still hard at work at making this happen. It has been a long road. It's been a tough road to talk about it each and every single week, kind of falling apart, but I'm
It's always
happy
the
to hear
Brits,
it.
isn't it, Mike?
It's
We're always the
Yeah.
fly in the ointment. We just got to rain on everyone's parade.
Es que el muchacho ese calvo con gafas, además de ser el guionista del Forspoken, otro gran fallo logístico que han tenido en esta entrevista, que van a poner al Redfall al nivel del Forspoken con este guionista, que dice que es británico y que dice que siempre están ahí metiendo la pata. Digo que es un gran fallo porque tú no puedes salir en la misma foto. El Redfall no es el Forspoken. El Forspoken es un desastre, una mierda de videojuego, el peor videojuego de la generación. El Redfall tiene un potencial enorme, es muy divertido, la gente lo está disfrutando, pero indudablemente le faltaban 4 o 5 meses para el pulido, el acabado, el quedar ya perfectamente presentable.
The tough one, Gary. Of course, we got to move on to the next one. Phil, of course, Redfall has released from Arcane Austin, and it's been a tough release week for that, coming out to low reviews and a lot of disappointment from many fans. Can you talk about that? What is your thoughts right now as we head into the first week of this game being out?
Bien, en primer lugar, esta pregunta tiene una enorme trampa. O sea, que ya da por hecho que absolutamente toda la comunidad está enfadada. No estamos hablando de la comunidad de Xbox. Aquí estamos ya metiendo a toda la prensa farfullera, estamos metiendo a todos los piperos, estamos metiendo a toda esta gentuza que en realidad ni las ve venir, pero se quiere unir a tirar piedras en cuanto oyen algo de ruido. Entonces ya aquí esto es una trampa. Esta pregunta es una pregunta trampa. Pero aún y así, vamos a descubrir que Phil Spencer está muy, muy cabreado, está muy enfadado. Lo vamos a ver de más mala leche que nunca. No vamos a decir que esté pegando gritos, ¿no? Pero sí se nota que ha pasado algo grave dentro de Microsoft. Y esto es interesantísimo.
Yeah, maybe I'll start. I'll hit Redfall, but I'll just say all up. There's nothing that's more difficult for me than disappointing the Xbox community. I've been a part of it for a long time. I obviously work on Xbox, head of the business, have a lot of friends, get a lot of feedback. And just to kind of watch the community lose confidence, be disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm upset with myself. I kind of
que se está flagelando.
Revisit our process. I think back to the announcement of 60 frames per second, and then we weren't shipping 60 frames per second. That was kind of
esto lo va a repetir mucho. Lo de que anunciaron que iba a ir el juego en IGN, que iba a ir a 60 frames, eso lo hizo Bethesda, y luego el videojuego no sale a 60 frames. Porque realmente el juego que entregaron fue el de PC. Aquí directamente el responsable es Peter Hines, y esto lo va a repetir muchas veces, de que realmente está cabreado con eso.
Punch in the chin, rightfully, a couple weeks ago. And then seeing the game come out and the critical response was not what we wanted.
Está señalando directamente al director de Bethesda. No a Todd Howard, a Peter Hines.
And it's disappointing. And so kind of pick myself up. What can we learn? How can we get better? One thing I'll fight is kind of what went wrong. There's clearly quality and execution things that we can do.
Con calidad no es que el Redfall sea malo, se refiere a lo de los 60 frames por segundo, o sea, a nivel técnico.
But one thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. Then a lot of people will say, hey, you've got teams know how to do one kind of game, just force them to go do the one kind of game that they have a proven track record for. And I'm just not a believer in that. Maybe that means I'll under-deliver for some of our fans out there. But when a team like Rare wants to do Sea of Thieves, when a team like Obsidian wants to do Grounded, when Tango wants to go do Hi-Fi, when everybody probably thought they were doing Evil Within 3, I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability, push their aspirations. But I also need to have a great selection of games that are continue to come that surprise and delight our fans. And we under-delivered on that. And for that, I apologize. It's not what I expect, not what I want. But, it's ours to deliver.
Aquí el muchacho negro, que estaréis muchos preguntando que qué hace ahí, va a hacer las mejores preguntas. Si habéis visto, acaba de hacer el gesto de pedir la palabra. Mientras estaba hablando Phil Spencer, porque es que de verdad va a representar perfectamente a todos los seguidores de Xbox, porque ahora mismo se están focalizando mucho, ¿no? Yo creo que la visión de la gente se ha visto bastante perturbada con todo lo de la CMA y la gente como que se ha pasado de rosca bastante. Los problemas no son esos. Ahora vamos a ver cuáles son los verdaderos problemas. Aquí una vez más, pues Phil Spencer se ha focalizado en que no van a presionar a los estudios de desarrollo, le van a dar total libertad, pero eso sí, quieren el juego perfectamente acabado, como es lógico.
So following up on that, Phil, so again, I appreciate the transparency on that, but there is a second component to this. And as you may or may not know, I talk to a lot of people in the Xbox community because I want to understand, what people are excited about, what they're frustrated about, things like that. So kind of sticking on this conversation about Redfall, but it's kind of a bigger general question as well. And I kind of want to read directly from this so I make sure I get it crystal clear. So what goes into the decision to delay a game when you launch it feature incomplete or there's a bunch of technical issues? Obviously, we've seen recent examples around the industry. Redfall and Halo Infinite are two that stick out in my mind for Xbox. We obviously have seen the review scores. Clearly, we've had the opinion that the game should be delayed. We know every developer wants to ship the best game that they possibly can, but from your level, what's the balance there on when to ship a game that may be feature incomplete or have some technical issues, or just simply give it more time and delay it?
Vale, esta pregunta es perfecta, realmente la opinión de la gente es, ¿dónde está el equilibrio entre lanzar o no un videojuego? Entre si está terminado o no está terminado el videojuego. O sea, realmente, ¿en qué punto Phil Spencer decide que hay que retrasar el videojuego? Y claro, muy claramente lo que le está diciendo es por qué se ha lanzado el Redfall. ¿Por qué se ha lanzado? ¿Vosotros sabíais lo que estaba pasando? Esto es realmente lo que se pregunta el aficionado de Xbox. ¿Por qué? Porque el usuario de Xbox y lo que es Microsoft tiene un handicap más 15. Todo lo tiene que hacer absolutamente perfecto. Las cosas que hagas bien no te van a dar una palmadita en la espalda ni te van a hacer que la has hecho bien. O sea, como por ejemplo del doblaje perfecto, profesional al español, por ejemplo. Nadie te lo va a tener en cuenta. Simplemente si no haces ese doblaje, se te van a tirar encima como lobos. O sea, Xbox, Microsoft le pasa eso. Otros pueden cometer el error ese de los 30 frames por segundo. Lo ha cometido Sony a lo largo de toda su historia. Pero si es Microsoft, se te van a echar al cuello. No puedes cometer esos errores. Tienes que hacerlo todo absolutamente perfecto. Es una gran injusticia. Tiene un handicap de más 15. A los demás no se les pide eso. Por lo tanto, tienes que hacerlo todo perfecto. Y es cierto que el público de Microsoft, esto lo sabe, también es cierto que quieren las mejores condiciones posibles, como es lógico, y se preguntan esto, el Redfall tiene mucho potencial, el Redfall es un gran juego, el Redfall es muy bueno, sobre todo es muy divertido, que es lo más importante de un videojuego, pero es una lástima que todo ese trabajo ahora lo veas todo emponzoñado por la opinión de la gente, que muchos de ellos ni lo han tocado, ni los van a tocar, ni les va ni les viene, pero quieren tirar mierda. Entonces, todo ese trabajo se viene emponzoñado, todo un gran juego, que uno ve un gran potencial, simplemente por la tontería de los 30 frames por segundo, que no es tontería, pero vosotros ya me entendéis. La tontería en el sentido de que se podía haber solucionado muy fácilmente. Es un problema logístico estúpido. No lanza el videojuego. Retrásalo. Simplemente la gente lo que quiere, porque el Game Pass tiene tantísimos videojuegos que te permite tener todo el tiempo del mundo, pero lo que quiere la gente es que saque el videojuego totalmente terminado. Eso es lo que pide la gente. Vamos a ver aquí cómo sigue. A ver la respuesta de Tito Phil, que esto es interesante.
Well, I think those are, and I'm happy to go very deep on this. I think if I think about a team's execution on a game, we had a creative vision, and did we realize that vision through the game that we created? That's not a delay question if the answer is no. Like, you can't take something that you started on. This isn't a Redfall specific conversation, right, but we will build games that review in the high 80s, and we will build games that review in the 60s. I mean, it's just kind of part of being in game publishing. And if you're afraid of that, then you shouldn't be in the entertainment business. You shouldn't be in the game.
Aquí está señalando otra vez a Peter Hines. Que dice que si tienes miedo de que tu videojuego reciba un 60, no deberías de estar en esta industria.
Games business. That said, every time we deliver something below our own internal expectations that surprises us, we should check our process. I don't look at the review scores on Redfall, and there are quality issues, and we're working on those. But I think there's a fundamental piece of feedback that we get that the game isn't realizing the creative vision that it had for its players. That doesn't feel like hey, just delay it. That feels like the game had a goal to do one thing, and when players are actually playing, they're not feeling that thing. They're not feeling the creative execution of the team. When a game needs to be delayed, what we did with Halo, we did with Starfield, we did with Redfall, because the production timeline is saying we have this vision and our production timelines don't get us to the completion of that vision, we do delay games. We do that. Learning about the quality, there are clearly, I've seen them. I know there are bugs in Redfall that's launching. But when I look at like the crash rates on the game, because we get all the telemetry of everything that's happened, it's not out of proportion for a game that has just launched.
Esto es interesante porque aquí Phil Spencer no achaca los errores realmente del Redfall al problemas técnicos de bugs o de grandes fallos de crasheo. Él dice que para eso están los retrasos realmente, o sea, cuando hay fallos técnicos evidentes, cuando el videojuego tiene esa clase de bugs, ¿no? Aquí Phil Spencer se está quejando de otra cosa, de que a él le vendieron la moto de que el Redfall iba a ser con una perspectiva creativa muy diferente a cómo se ha lanzado. Una vez más, ha habido un total fallo de comunicación dentro de Bethesda, y aquí dice muy claramente Phil Spencer, y lo va a estar diciendo a lo largo de toda la entrevista, de que se siente traicionado, de que se siente engañado, pero no por Arcane, sino por el que se tiene que dirigir hacia al jefe de los estudios de Bethesda, Peter Hines.
It's kind of in the pocket of what we would expect. That's not to deny any of the animation, streaming of texture bugs, the AI bugs that we've seen. We will go work on those. But when I look at the review scores of this game, it's did we have enough of creative differentiation in our core idea? And did we realize that creative ambition? I'm a huge supporter of Arcane Austin. Their track record is awesome. I love a lot of the great games that they've built. This is one where the team didn't hit their own internal goals when it launched. I think it's maybe a little simplistic to just say, hey, if you would have just delayed it 3 months, the core creative of the game would have...
Dice que es una perspectiva demasiado simplista lo de decir que había que retrasarlo 3 meses. Pero es que realmente es así. Ignoro lo que ha pasado interiormente, al parecer el follón ha sido ese, hay una lucha interna, hay el jefe de estudio de desarrollo de Bethesda, el que tampoco estuvo muy de acuerdo con la compra de Microsoft, Peter Hines, que lo reconoceréis porque ha estado en muchas presentaciones de Bethesda, así que tiene el pelo blanco, ya hablaré de él sobre otro vídeo activamente. Pero sí, el problema ha sido ese. Aquí Phil Spencer es que está muy cabreado, pero ha sido un problema de logística muy claramente. Lanzar el videojuego prácticamente después de la negativa de la CMA, eso ha sido un enormísimo error. Por supuesto, lo de los 30 frames por segundo en consola es darle un lanzallama a un mono, que es directamente cómo se ha comportado la comunidad de videojuegos. Y luego el acabado. Dale 4 meses más, dale 5 meses más de cocción. ¿Cuál habría sido la opinión después de esos 4 o 5 meses? Totalmente alejado de lo de la decisión de la CMA. ¿Y si el videojuego hubiese salido a 60 frames por segundo? Este videojuego habría recibido en Metacritic un 80 y pico, 84, 85, 86. Todo el mundo habría estado muy contento, bla, 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 bla. Esa habría sido la realidad. No. Eso, pero también él se siente engañado porque al parecer le explicaron que el videojuego iba a ser de una manera interna totalmente distinta.
Delivered on something that was different than what it was. So I look at them at different camps. If there's a production timeline issue, we've been open to delaying. If we just have more bugs than we should have at the end of a game, we're open to delaying. At some point, we have to have a creative vision and put the game out.
Claro, dice que el problema no son los bugs.
Reviewers and players will tell us.
El problema es que pensaba que el juego era distinto.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course. Please, Gary.
So I have just a couple of small observations and then a question. First of all, I want to give Phil props for coming on here today
props,
and talk just for a minute about why I admire Phil, because he and I have been here before. Back in 2020, during the pandemic, when I was doing Animal Talking, Phil, you'll remember this. Phil was booked to come on my dumb Animal Crossing talk show. And then after he was booked, the news came that Halo Infinite was going to be delayed and would not ship with the Xbox Series X and S. And it was you'll remember, it was a big deal. There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and people rending their garments. And I was fully prepared for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for a call from Xbox PR, from Jeff, your friend of mine, Jeff, over in Xbox PR, to say, Phil's...
Estaban haciendo este espacio con Phil Spencer y en esos momentos se dijo que el Halo Infinite se iba a retrasar y que no iba a salir de salida con el pack de la Xbox Series X o de la Xbox Series S en el 2020. Que eso fue como una gran decepción para Microsoft. Entonces esperaban la cancelación de la participación en este evento de Phil Spencer. Y sin embargo, sí que fue Phil Spencer. No canceló nada, ¿no? Está intentando decir que es muy valiente de su parte y que le honra mucho.
Was not going to be able to come on the show live because, it's a big mess right now. We don't want to put him in the firing line for that. And Jeff called and I thought, here it is. Here comes the other shoe. And he was like, Phil just wants to know, when's the tech rehearsal? It's going ahead. And he came on a live talk show and took a bunch of tough questions on a really tough subject and took it on the chin. And I've always admired him for that, for not... It would have been very easy for him to pull out, and he didn't. He came on and he's doing it again now, and I salute Phil for that. The other point I want to make is that every time... There may be some Sony platform warriors out there right now crowing about the fact that Redfall has underperformed.
Interesante. Sony Warriors. Están hablando sobre el lanzamiento de Redfall. Acaba de señalar Sony Warriors. Está señalando ya a los fanáticos, a los piperos. Acaba de señalarlo a este señor. Guionista de Forspoken, despedido.
I want to point this out as a creative. Every time somebody takes a big bet, especially a big AAA bet, on an original idea, a new IP, and it fails, everybody suffers. It's bad for everybody because it makes it that much harder for the Phils and the Jim Ryans of the world, the big, the creative, the decision makers, to take a chance on them. Oh, but the last time we did that, it didn't work. Like maybe let's just make a sequel to the next thing, or let the algorithm tell us what to do. So every time somebody takes a risk on something new, and especially if it involves something different in game design, let's try something that has been done, but when it doesn't work, it hurts everybody. So I just want everyone to be clear, this sucks for everybody. And I see it in my business, I see it in Hollywood, I see it in film and television. It's why so much content is so generic and derivative and formulaic, because everyone's afraid to take a risk. And when something new succeeds, it's good for everyone. When something new and original fails, it's bad for everyone. So I just want to acknowledge that this is like a big shit sandwich, and we all have to take a bite, including the Sony people, including everybody.
Incluido Sony people y tal, está pegándole fuerte a Sony.
Specifically this is a long time. Specifically with a question for Phil, I want to talk specifically about Redfall. When you say that you're disappointed in the reaction, that to me suggests that the reaction was something different than what you were expecting, what you were hoping for. But I know that when these big AAA games, they get subjected to all kinds of internal testing. Focus groups come in. There are third-party companies that will come in and even write like mock reviews, or it comes like Hit Detection out that will tell you, here's what you can expect the press to make of your game. So usually you've got a sense of what the game is how it's going to be received before it's released, so you can be prepared for it.
Está preguntando que internamente cómo esperaban que iba a ser el lanzamiento de Redfall. ¿Cuál era la puntuación que se esperaban o cuál era el recibimiento que creía que iba a tener?
So Phil, when you say you're disappointed, does that mean that you thought the game was going to be better received, or was it in line with expectations? How surprised were you by the reaction, or how internally how much do you know? I feel like this one, people we know the game. It has problems. To what extent was this different from what you expected? And also, and sorry, I know I've been talking a long time. And the second part of that is, when a game is released now, it's not like the old days when a cartridge was shipped in a box and the release of the game was the end of the game's development cycle. Now it's just the 1.0 release is just a point on the roadmap. To what extent, given that what we're talking about here is not just 30 frames, but design issues, things that may be more conceptual, to what extent do you think, or are you committed to continuing to work on the game and getting it maybe a year down the road, Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky, we've seen these redemptive stories in the past. To what extent do you hold out hope that you can still get the game closer to where you wanted it to be at launch? I know that was a lot.
No,
La pregunta es muy interesante. Es hasta qué punto estás comprometido con un videojuego, de enterarte, de ser como una especie de supervisor de lo que está pasando dentro del videojuego y tal. Está claro que Bethesda ha ido por su parte y que le ha estado prometiendo a Phil Spencer que todo iba a salir bien. El videojuego no estaba terminado, el videojuego al parecer encima es diferente a lo que le habían contado a Phil Spencer. En fin, es un gran desastre. Como digo, el Peter Hines la ha cagado hasta el fondo.
First, I thought your words about creative ambition of teams, you especially, I mean, you've lived this, you've done this, are very well said and very spot on. So thank you for that. And that's why I love your voice in this community, because you've created, you've seen kind of ups, and as anybody in the industry, we've all seen downs. And on the score, yeah, we do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and this is like double digits lower than we thought we would be.
Fíjate tú. Son 2 dígitos más bajo de lo que pensábamos. O sea, lo que pensaba Phil Spencer es que en Metacritic este Redfall iba a recibir 80 y pico. En primer lugar, un gran error de Phil Spencer y de su equipo estar pendiente de lo que diga Metacritic. Tú no puedes estar pendiente de lo que diga Metacritic. El High on Life ha recibido un 60 y pico. El Sea of Thieves recibió un 69. Tienes que recibir ese feedback de cómo es realmente un videojuego con el sentir de la comunidad. Como no tienen mucho tiempo, utilizan esta clase de herramientas, pero no son las más acertadas. Pero eso, ellos esperaban un 80 y pico de este videojuego.
With this game, went through our mock reviews, and that's what's one of the disappointing things. Like we would never strive to launch a game that we thought was going to review in the low 60s. It's not.
Dice que nunca habríamos lanzado un videojuego que iba a recibir 60 y pocos, ¿no?
Not part of our goals. If you look at our review scores over the last year, it's not a defense at all. If you look at the review scores over the last year, I think the teams have done a better job in upping the level of quality of the games that we've shipped. Some of those games first shipped on PlayStation, but still, when I go through the
Ghostwire Tokyo, Deathloop, Grounded, Pentiment, Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, Age of Empires 4 han recibido grandes puntuaciones.
the list of the games, you still have to build a game, you still have to ship a game. And this game was significantly below our internal metrics in terms of where it actually reviewed. But that's not on anybody but us. Like, we have to own that. In terms of our commitment to the game, absolutely. The team at Arcane is on taking the near-term feedback. We're still working on the 60 frames per second. We have a good timeline for that. We're committed to getting that done. And we're going to continue to work the game. I think we've shown a commitment to games like Sea of Thieves and like Grounded to continue to go and build games. But I also know that these games are $70, and I'm not gonna I'm gonna take full responsibility for launching a game that needs to be great. You know.
Dice que sabe que estos videojuegos cuestan $70 y que deberían de estar totalmente preparados de lanzamiento y no tener que esperar al parche con los 60 frames por segundo.
I think what I have with the Xbox community, what I am a part of, is a team. There's still questions that pop every so often of how committed is the company to this category? When are we just going to push Xbox out of the market? There's a lot of Twitter firing of Phil right now, which is fine. I'm way overpaid for the role I have anyway, so I get that's my responsibility. But
ahora mismo las letras de la traducción están totalmente locas y sin embargo la transcripción de muchos de los portales es lo que ponen las letras. Es que no escuchan realmente lo que está diciendo Phil Spencer. Lo que pone las letras es una chorrada, no tiene nada que ver prácticamente con lo que dice Phil.
We will remain committed to the game and the players as long as the players want to go play games. And that's my commitment to the community. I'm kind of at a low point right now in terms of my delivery on that commitment to the community. But it very much stays. I want to support the team. I want to support the creative ambitions of the teams. And I want to support the players. And we let a lot of people down this week with the launch of the game, but we will continue to strive on. You have to, right? That's what creative is about.
Vale, que van a seguir apoyando a los equipos de desarrollo, a los jugadores, a todo, pero que se sienten decepcionados, pero no por el videojuego en sí, se sienten decepcionados por todo el recibimiento, por todo lo que ha sido el lanzamiento, ¿no?
No, you absolutely do. And to kind of start transitioning this into hopefully more happy news, but I do want to address something, around that. Obviously today you announced the Xbox Game Showcase, which will be happening this June.
Atención, porque esta pregunta es la trascendental, es la más... va a hacer 2 preguntas seguidas este señor perfectas. le va a hablar sobre el Xbox Showcase. Y aquí sí que es verdad que va a ser una que Phil Spencer no se espera.
And obviously there's going to be a lot of new reveals and surprises that come out of that, which is great. But I am going to bring it back again to another common theme that I do hear through the community. And I've actually said this to you in the past, but it's about communication coming from Xbox. I do feel back in 2021, you did a fantastic job with communication, which arguably has been the best year during this current generation of Xbox. Obviously,
Sí, el 2021 fue un año perfecto, con el Psychonauts 2, Age of Empires 4, Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5.
we know that 2022 was a light year for Xbox as far as releasing titles. Now, last year, during the showcase, you had the 12-month plan. You didn't necessarily deliver on all the games coming.
No, we didn't deliver. Not
months.
necessarily. We didn't deliver.
Absolutely. So,
Bien, lo que acaba de decir y acaba de responder el Phil Spencer que no hemos lanzado esos videojuegos en los 12 meses. A ver, es perfecta. Microsoft se prometió que iba a lanzar todos los videojuegos del año pasado que presentó de junio para atrás. O sea, ya tendrían que haber salido. Prácticamente todos. Starfield incluido, Forza Motorsport incluido, Hollow Knight Silksong tenía que haber salido también, yo qué sé. Es que eran muchísimos videojuegos. El Ark 2 se va para el 2025. Y se supone que tenía que haber salido para antes de junio del 2023. Aquí está muy bien que se lo señale, como diciendo, a ver, si no va a cumplir, no lo digas. La gente está muy contenta. La comunidad de Xbox está eufórica. Nunca se había visto nada ni remotamente parecido en la historia de los videojuegos. El servicio del Game Pass y todo lo que está significando ese ecosistema perfecto de videoconsola, PC, todo, xCloud, todo de Xbox. Así que no hace falta esas bravuconerías, no hacen falta venderte de más, es que no hace falta. Si ya el público, con todo lo que está saliendo continuamente del Game Pass, que son cosas de mucha calidad y que a la gente le está encantando y que continuamente... Tómate todo el tiempo que quieras, pero no me prometas cosas que no puedes cumplir, no firmes cheques que luego no vas a pagar.
oh, my point of bringing that up is this, talking about some of the lessons learned that come out of that. And obviously, even with not every game making the 12 months, going back to, again, game development, things happen, things aren't always going to come on time. But as we go into this showcase, one of the common themes that I hear is, I don't know enough about things that you've announced in the past, like even more specifically going back to 2020. And I'll just run down.
Atención, porque, claro, esta es una cosa que hice vídeo hace nada de esta crítica hacia Xbox. ¿Qué ha pasado con Perfect Dark? ¿Qué ha pasado con Fable? ¿Qué ha pasado con State of Decay 3? ¿Qué ha pasado con el Everwild? Tú lo que no puedes es presentar un videojuego por todo lo alto en 2020 y luego no tener ni una puñetera noticia hasta hoy. No estás actualizando bien la información. Ya independientemente de que lo has anunciado demasiado pronto. Estás desgastando el producto. Lo has hecho demasiado pronto. De acuerdo, pero si lo haces tan pronto, cada cierto tiempo tienes que mostrar algo. Pero es que no se sabe nada. Es el cero más absoluto. Y si lo está diciendo, perfecto.
On a quick list of it. Vowed, Perfect Dark, Everwild, which is something we really don't know that much about. Fable, State of Decay 3, Contraband. Obviously, we've seen a little more in Hellblade 2. We have studios like inXile and Compulsion Games that we know are working on things. But
tenemos estudios como Exile o Convulsion que no sabemos en qué está trabajando.
We haven't seen any real updates on that. So I titled all my questions Balance and Communication, because even in this, it's like, what is that balance on when you show something that you know is going to be years down the road? And
¿cuál es el equilibrio entre enseñar algo y luego los años que pasan hasta que se ponga a la venta? Es que se lo está diciendo perfecto y esto viene muy bien para que lo sepa Phil Spencer, para que sepa, porque esta gente tiene tantas cosas que hacer, están en su palacio de cristal donde tienen tantísimos asuntos, que es el trascendental. Este es el trascendental. No pueden cometer esta clase de errores. Errores de logística, de marketing.
And kind of that cadence of providing updates along the way. And obviously, as we go into this showcase, not that you need to reveal anything specific here, but what were some of those lessons learned from last year's showcase that you'll bring into this one?
Dice que qué han aprendido del pasado showcase para el que se va a presentar ahora. qué lecciones han aprendido después de estos errores, después de que no has presentado los videojuegos en esos 12 meses y después de que videojuegos que han sido ya presentados anteriormente tampoco hay actualizaciones de información. O sea, es todo lo contrario. Mira, un lanzamiento que fue perfecto fue el del Forza Horizon 5. Se presenta en el Xbox Showcase. Al cabo de pocos meses se pone a la venta. Y en ese tiempo entre medias se enseñan muchas imágenes. Eso fue un lanzamiento perfecto y ha sido un mega éxito el Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah, and you might try to get me on positive. I'm not in positive mode this week, so I'll apologize
Dice, voy a responderte positivo, pero no voy a estar en positivo. Está cabreadete.
for staying in kind of cranky mode. But in terms of lessons learned, and I'll even go back to the Redfall videos on IGN of showing videos of the game running at 60 on PC, at the point knowing that the game was going to run 30 frames per second at launch on console. Like, we have to be transparent about what we're showing, that what we're showing is representative of what our console.
Ha ido otra vez a lo de Redfall con lo de los 30 frames por segundo, que realmente no tenía por qué haberlo dicho. Eso quiere decir que quiere mucho señalar a cierta persona dentro de Microsoft y dentro de Bethesda. La quiere señalar, quiere culpabilizarlo de todo, que internamente sabrán quién es. Yo creo que es Peter Hines.
Customer, our most committed customer to our brand, financially committed, what they're going to see, what they're going to play, and that transparency just has to get better. And I'm not pointing at anybody but myself, right? And you know, I guess
Dice, no apunto a nadie nada más que a mí mismo. No, está apuntando a Bethesda y a ese.
that at some point I will have enough knocks against me that it's somebody else here. But you know, that I think it's transparency in what we're building, what our aspiration is for the game, what it's going to look like, what the features are. And it drives me crazy when we self-inflicted wounds of kind of putting things out there of communication that's confusing or misleading about what the actual end product is going to be. So you can try to take me to positive space. I'm just not in that headspace right now. That said, when I go and I look at Showcase, and I'm not going to try to oversell Showcase here, because if I were on the other side of watching this, it's like, hey, after Redfall, I'm going to put my hands on the controller, and that's what's going to take to kind of prove to me. But that's not what Showcase is. So I'm very enthusiastic about Showcase.
Esto es lo interesante, ¿no? Después de todo lo que ha dicho, que él comprende, ¿no? Toda la decepción o todo lo que la gente no se fía, todos los palos que le pueden dar a él, pero dice que está muy entusiasmado con el Showcase. Aquí empieza un poco la esperanza, ¿no? De que este Xbox Showcase va a ser muy grande, ¿no?
We're going to announce some things that people haven't seen, some new games. We're going to give updates to some of the things that were on your list. The other thing that gets me really excited is when I look forward over the next quarters, which has always been my focus of how do we get a big game out every quarter at quality.
Cómo sacamos cada trimestre un videojuego con calidad.
That things are lining up finally.
Dice que finalmente las cosas se están alineando. Aquí, por ejemplo, hay portales como Somos Xbox, o algunos portales que están directamente mintiendo porque están transcribiendo mal las palabras de Phil Spencer. Aquí no está prometiendo Phil Spencer que van a lanzar un videojuego AAA cada... Dice que se está alineando no todo para que finalmente puedan hacer estas cosas. No lo está afirmando taxativamente, no. Está diciendo que ya todas las cosas se están alineando para conseguir esa meta, la de lanzar un videojuego AAA de mucha calidad cada trimestre.
After some of the slowdown through COVID, I'm tired of talking about that. But I can now see that we've got games coming every quarter that I think will surprise and delight our customers. We still have to deliver on the creative. We still have to deliver on the technical. Not every game we ship is for everybody. We know that. Like,
no todos los juegos que vamos a lanzar son para todo el mundo. Sabemos eso.
I don't want to build. I'm not trying to build the one game to rule them all. We will
Dice que no está tratando de construir el superjuego, el super gran juego que va a conquistarlo a todos.
have different creative takes and we have a very diverse portfolio when you think about the stuff that Microsoft Game Studios builds. But I like that. I think for what we're trying to do as Xbox, which isn't to mimic any of the other platforms out there, it's create our own brand and identity. The diversity of what we build, hopefully, will end up being a strength.
Como si fuese, al haber tanta libertad creativa, muchos videojuegos de nicho, que esa es la gran fortaleza de Game Pass. Como hay tantos juegos, tantos juegos de nicho que hay videojuegos para todo, en lo que son los videojuegos que realmente apasionan a cada uno de nosotros, ¿no? Entonces está bien en ese sentido, ¿no? Está construyendo muy bien eso.
But we have to do it at quality. We have to do it on time.
Tenemos que hacerlo con calidad, se refiere a lo de los 60 frames por segundo, y tenemos que hacerlo a tiempo, que esté completamente terminado. Una vez más, referencia a Redfall.
And we have to show people what they're actually going to see. We have to
Yes.
show gameplay, and I think I'm kind of beyond that. Like, we've got to put great games in the hands of our players.
Que tiene que haber más gameplay de enseñar, porque no se ha enseñado bien el gameplay del Redfall.
There's nothing else.
If I could follow up on that, and I apologize, I do not want to dominate the conversation, but I make sure I want to follow up on the point of everything that you just said, and I'll take it from a personal standpoint. I've been a big
Aquí ya se están sintiendo todos incómodos porque es que lo está haciendo muy bien este muchacho que le está haciendo estas preguntas, porque son las preguntas realmente incómodas.
believer in what Xbox has been building since about 2016, right?
Sé que es un gran believer, gran seguidor de todo lo que lleva haciendo Xbox desde 2016 y realmente cualquier seguidor de Xbox.
Xbox Play Anywhere, Game Pass, what you're doing with the Series X and S, just the cloud initiative, everything. I love all the services and the marketing message that you present to the community. But to your point, and for me personally, I have Game Pass. My kids play it. We all love it. But you, like you even mentioned, delivering quality experiences every quarter, things like that. That's the sentiment that we get from the community right now. That's the sentiment that I even have of it's great to talk about these things. I think we've been talking about them ad nauseum. It's like, when are we going to get to that point of actually delivering these experiences? Like I just ran down those games. There's 20 something studios. Forget Activision. Xbox Game Studios, what it is today. There's more than enough
Da igual lo de Activision. Xbox tiene los suficientes estudios como para permitir eso, ¿no?
studios and titles out there that we're all anticipating. And I think that is the common frustration that I see out there from people, that it's like, we're tired of hearing wait till next year. And I know
Dice, estamos como cansados, ¿no? Esa frustración de que hay muchos estudios de desarrollo, muchos videojuegos esperando a que se saquen, pero que siempre tiene que esperar al siguiente año.
you know that, but
I know,
it's like,
I know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this year started out well.
yeah.
Dice, este año comenzó bien, claro, el Hi-Fi Rush. Ya ves tú si comenzó bien, fue genial.
A developer direct was received well. The team did a really good job, I thought, with the messaging around to your point, around setting expectation. And I will even say, yes, I'm rooting for the home team here, but I'll say over delivering on expectations of that show versus what it was. I think the drop of Hi-Fi to say, hey, if you've got Game Pass, you don't even have to buy the game. Like, just go click. People loved Hi-Fi. Something we don't talk a lot about, that same month, Age 2 on console shipped. Truth be told, more people are playing a bunch of people are playing Hi-Fi and Age 2, but Age 2 actually has more players right now. But all
Claro, es normal, el Age of Empires tiene más jugadores, se lanzó el mismo mes que el Hi-Fi Rush. Claro, el Age of Empires es un mega gigante. Pero claro, el Hi-Fi Rush es el que te da esa magia, ¿no? Ese sentirse otra vez niño. Evidentemente vas a jugar más al Age of Empires, entre otras cosas por la idiosincrasia del mismo videojuego, de lo que es en sí, ¿no?
all the fanfare goes to the highly rated kind of new Hi-Fi. Get that. I know the review scores on Minecraft Legends. Minecraft, I think, always reviews somewhere kind of different than the top. But if I look at the reaction, I think we've already had over 3 million people playing. I saw, like, its launch week, it was the #1 retail game on the Switch in Japan, which isn't always where Microsoft sits in terms of sales. So I feel like momentum is building, and then something like Redfall happens, and the Xbox community should demand a lot from us as a team, where we sit inside of Microsoft. We've got the resources to do better. 2022 was, as you said, a very light year, I think is what you said. I might have other words for it.
Dice que Xbox tuvo un año muy suave. Dice que él tendría otras palabras para referirse al año 2022. Pero bueno.
And then 2023, we started well, and this was a knockback. But it's our job to go and deliver on the next games. I can only look forward, right? I can sit here and wallow in my own frustration, but all I can do is say, I'm going to do better tomorrow than I did yesterday. and continue to support the teams. And
¿No os creáis vosotros que a Phil Spencer le ha hecho mucha gracia toda la intervención del muchacho este, del hombre este? No le ha hecho mucha gracia, pero es trascendental que sepa perfectamente el verdadero sentir de la comunidad, que es ese. Tienes 500.000 juegos en desarrollo. ¿Dónde están? ¿Qué están pasando con ellos? ¿Por qué se está retrasando tanto tiempo? ¿Por qué no sabemos nada sobre ellos? Es trascendental, realmente, para que no vuelvan a repetir esos fallos, para que si tienes un videojuego en desarrollo en estos momentos muy importantes, enséñamelo realmente cuando esté preparado, no antes. No hagas que me ilusione demasiado pronto. Como ese padre que le dice a su hijo, te voy a regalar un Super Scalestri de la leche, y te lo promete hace 4 navidades. Papá, ¿dónde está la Scalestri? Que ya tengo 18 años, que me voy a la universidad, chiquillo.
And continue to grow. But yeah, I think it is ours to prove that. I can say now, and everybody can already stop, I don't want to hear what Phil has to say about the future, and I kind of fully respect that point of view, that we've got Starfield coming, we've got Forza
Tenemos Starfield en camino,
coming, we've got
tenemos Forza en camino,
Hellblade coming, like
tenemos Hellblade coming. Esto es muy interesante, lo de Hellblade coming, ¿no? A mí ya con esto, bueno, sería un año maravillosísimo. O sea, se lanza Starfield, Forza y el Hellblade, joder, o sea, la leche.
got collections of games. I'm seeing very good builds of Avowed and stuff. Like I can see it. But until you have a controller in your hand and you're smiling from playing our games, none of my words should matter.
Claro, hasta que no tenga el juego, ninguna de mis palabras van a funcionar. Aquí hay un anuncio, vamos a pasarlo.
Funny.
Paris was just talking about what have you learned. And I want to go back to that in the case of Redfall, even just as a case study for things like this when they happen in general. Because Redfall wasn't even the only game to stumble out of the gate this week. Look at the PC version of Jedi Survivor.
Fíjate en la versión de Jedi Survivor y ahora va a apuntar otra vez a PlayStation.
What a mess. Unacceptable that that game shipped in the state that it was. And they must have known. It was like, oh, geez, the game has bugs. No, you knew, and you shipped it anyway.
Tú sabías que el videojuego era un desastre y aún así lo has lanzado. El Jedi Survivor es bastante más desastre que el Redfall, por cierto.
So EA Respawn Freaks, even on a massive title like that, it's going to be a Game of the Year contender. We all know that. But like the PC version was unacceptable. My understanding is the PlayStation version's a bit of a mess as well.
Tengo entendido que la versión de PlayStation también es un desastre. Esto del analito de Dix no lo va a poner, pero es que es así, es un desastre.
So we're still seeing this stuff happening on the regular. Just in general, when things, I'm fascinated, as you might know, I'm fascinated by the subject of failure because I've experienced a lot of it in my own career and in my personal life as well, and I think about it a lot. The number one quote that I stole from a person much smarter than me, I talk about it all the time when I talk about writing at creative seminars and things like that, is failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of it. But that's only true if you can get past feeling sorry for yourself when something fails and sift through the rubble and start figuring out, well, what can we learn? What can we learn from this failure? What can we take from this? What is teachable? And so I wanted to ask Phil, both in general and in the case of Red.
Bueno, desde luego, Microsoft va a aprender mucho interiormente de lo del Redfall en cuanto a los estudios que ha contratado de fuera, cuál es la calidad a la que se tienen que amoldar a partir de ahora con Microsoft, de que tienen que hacerlo todo perfecto porque si no los imbéciles se le van a tirar al cuello. Van a aprender mucho de Redfall y sobre todo en la comunicación van a aprender mucho dentro de la propia empresa.
Redfall, I know you said you were going to work in towards kind of turning the game around, but like, do you have a formal process and what does it look like in the case of Redfall when something doesn't meet expectations? Is it something you get into right away or do you wait for the dust to settle? What is the post-mortem process? What is the what went wrong and how do we prevent this from happening again process look like at Xbox?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think I love your quote, Gary. I might lift.
Fíjate que cada vez que hace una pregunta el Phil Spencer le responde haciéndole un poco la pelota, sin embargo al otro no se la ha hecho, ya porque ha hecho realmente las preguntas jodidas.
That from you. People don't have to care about this, but I'll talk about it. When we acquire studios, there's games that are in development when we acquire a studio, and then there's things that are either really early in development or not even conceived yet. And I think we need to improve on engaging in games that are midway through production when they become part of Xbox. I do think there's a different expectation for a game and even a team when you've been third party and all of a sudden you become part of first party. There's a difference.
Esto es interesantísimo. Acaba de decir que es distinto cuando eres un third party a cuando haces un videojuego para Xbox de cuando eres un first party. Cuando eres un first party es eso, te van a medir con otra vara de medir, ya eres parte de Microsoft, te van a dar por todos los lados y tienes que estar a un punto, a un nivel de calidad extraordinario. Y hay gente, dice Phil Spencer, que no se ha enterado todavía de eso.
Different expectation in terms of how you're going to perform on our console. I think there's a different competitive set when people look at what this game is and the other games that they're going to say, hey, I want this game to feel as competitive as this other game on another console platform in our case. And we didn't do a good job early on in engaging with Arcane Austin to really help them understand what it meant to be part of Xbox and part of first party and use some of our
Así que no se han enterado de Arcane Austin de lo que significa estar dentro de Microsoft como first party.
internal resources to help them and kind of move along that journey even faster. So we kind of left them to go work on the game. They're very
Es que al parecer ha habido una confusión en la comunicación en la que realmente le podrían haber ayudado con muchos más trabajadores, con mucho más equipo de desarrollo. Hay 500.000 trabajadores ahora mismo en los estudios de desarrollo de Microsoft. Podrían haber ayudado al equipo de Redfall y sin embargo ha habido un fallo total de comunicación. También todo tiene que ver porque se está volcando mucho Microsoft en la compra de Activision Blizzard y Redfall es el principal perjudicado, ¿no?
very talented team.
No ha recibido la suficiente atención.
I love that team, and I still do, and I will totally bet on them to do another great game. But when like Matt Booty and Jamie Leader, who's running ZeniMax, and I sit down, I think we can engage earlier with our different studios. And I do think there's a difference when we come in when the creative's already set on a game. That's not washing our hands of any of the creative. Every game we ship from our teams is an Xbox game. And so it's a full responsibility for it. But thinking about how our internal processes of dev assistance, even some of our internal ATG resources, what's the Advanced Technology Group, and how those work with our internal teams, I think we can do a better job with our internal teams. We did a better job with Starfield. Again, nobody should believe it until they're playing the game. But that game was earlier on in production, and it was easier for us to kind of swarm a bunch of people to go and kind of help with some of the technology on our platform and ensure that we're going to ship a quality experience there. And we should have been there for Harvey and the team earlier. I think that's on us. And then through the...
Que deberían de haber estado ayudando a los de Redfall antes, ¿no? Que ese ha sido el fallo de comunicación. Que podrían haberlo hecho, pero que por un fallo...
process, you know, it's an Unreal game. We have a bunch of studios that have done some really great work on Unreal over the years. And I think we were too late to help in that when they had certain issues that they
Llegaron demasiado tarde para ayudar, ¿no? a solucionar esos problemas, ¿no?
were working through, which any team will. It's nothing to do with the specific engine. But we have a lot of experience, and we needed to get on that earlier with the team. And we didn't do that. And that's not an excuse. You asked just to kind of diagnose. So when the 60 frames per second issue came up,
Estaba refiriendo mucho a lo de los 60 frames por segundo en consola y que eso se podría haber solucionado, ¿no?
we were definitely diving in. We had people from the Coalition and people from Rare and stuff looking, both teams that have done some really great work with Unreal to help us build a 60 FPS plan. But
Podían haber ayudado el equipo de Rare o el equipo de The Coalition.
obviously that was a plan that had to be in place last fall in order for us to really be in a position to have it at launch. And I take that
Que podían haber ayudado el pasado otoño y que todo hubiese estado listo para el lanzamiento, pero ha habido ese fallo.
as learning, as painful as it
Esto es increíble, es un nivel de transparencia total.
is. But as you said, you know, it's part of getting to success are those learnings and that diagnosis. There's a bunch of other stuff I could go into, but then we end up with kind of dev doc, which I'm happy to do. But yeah.
Well, Phil, we don't have much time with you, so I'm going to go around the table, give everybody one final question for Phil. I'm going to rattle off a couple quick ones with you, Phil. Of course, we talk about 60 frames, 30 frames. Should Xbox players expect a clear message this summer with Starfield with 30 and 60 frames? That's a big lesson learned, as you brought up. Should we expect that answer? It's clear as day?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great one. Another one.
Dice que se ha quedado lo suficientemente claro para Phil Spencer lo de los 30 frames, lo de los 60 frames para Starfield. ¿Eso quiere decir que Starfield va a estar a 60 frames en consola? No. Pero ¿qué dice Phil Spencer? Que ha que ha comprendido todo esto, que ha comprendido todo el punto de lo del Redfall, de que quieren las cosas 60 frames, de que tal y igual. Dice Tito Phil que lo ha comprendido. Bueno, a ver si pueden conseguirlo, va a ser muy complicado. Pero bueno, a ver si pueden.
You see a lot of conversation, of course. I want to praise you and the team for really elevating the PC side of this Xbox ecosystem. I think we've seen a lot of great strides in that. But when you see the community...
Aquí la pregunta es muy estúpida, pero la respuesta está muy bien. O sea, la pregunta va a ser simplemente de...
Talk about the console side of things. Do you think you've lost the focus or maybe put too much onto the PC side? Do you think that the console is still getting the console love that it deserves, whether it be the homepage update, achievements, of course, looking forward and using the power of this next gen? Do you think you guys have lost that focus or is it still there and can we see more love on that side?
Esta es una pregunta estúpida porque está diciendo que si han perdido el enfoque de la importancia del Game Pass en consola y que al parecer se le está dando más mimo al de PC. Y lo siento, pero es que antes se quejaban de lo contrario, o sea, de que en PC no estaban los mismos videojuegos que en consola, bla, 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 bla. Una pregunta estúpida.
Well, we'll definitely continue to focus on making our console experience as great as it can be. I like the homepage refresh and some stuff. I will say, this might be disruptive as well. We have a different vision. You know, Paris talked about this. It's play the games you want with the people you want anywhere you want. We want Xbox to be something that people who buy our console can feel like they're a member of. Obviously, who are playing on PC, who are playing on cloud, that they feel like they're full members of our ecosystem. Game Pass players can play on many different devices, and we remain fully committed to that. We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony.
No estamos en el negocio para cancelar a Sony. Esto es un mensaje precisamente a Sony. A ellos sí están en el negocio para cancelar a Xbox. No estamos en el negocio para cancelar a Sony o a Nintendo, va a decir.
Or out-consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know
eso no es una gran solución ni una victoria para nosotros.
That will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter is that when you're third place,
cuando ocupa el tercer puesto
in the console marketplace, and
en el mercado de las consolas,
the top two players are as strong as they are and have, in certain cases, very, very discrete focus on doing deals and other things that will that kind of make being Xbox hard.
Aquí se está refiriendo a Sony. Dice, cuando tiene a dos competidores como son PlayStation y Nintendo, y hay un competidor que es Sony, que nos lo está poniendo tan difícil con los contratos, un competidor que nos está poniendo tantas trabas, que nos está haciendo tanta marrullería, que se está comportando de una manera tan sucia. Eso es lo que está diciendo. Tenemos un competidor que es un cerdo, que es Sony. Eso es lo que ha dicho.
For us as a team, that's on us, not on anybody else. Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first-class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform. But we are not in a position, and I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation.
Perdimos la peor generación, la que podíamos haberla perdido, que es la de la Xbox One.
Where everybody built their digital library of games.
Donde todos construyeron su biblioteca digital de juegos.
So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if we just focused more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the three ecosystems. And their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games that they're playing were games that were available last gen. When you think about Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, like the continuity from generation to generation is so strong. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs and every new generation was a clean slate and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There is no
Es lo que quiere decir es que se entremezclan los videojuegos de la pasada generación con los de esta. Estamos hablando de League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, estamos hablando de Fortnite, estamos hablando de Valorant, estamos hablando de Minecraft, estamos hablando de un mogollón de videojuegos que aún a día de hoy son grandes éxitos. Entonces, es lo que habla de esa continuidad, que ya no podemos hablar de precisamente lo que decía Jim Ryan, no, creemos en las generaciones, ¿no? Lo que está diciendo es que tiene que haber videojuegos de todo, que se pueden ampliar con el paso del tiempo, en fin.
no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s. That's not going to happen. So what we have
Así que aunque Starfield sea perfecto y reciba un 11 sobre 10, que la gente no va a vender su PlayStation 5, ¿no?
to do, and we have this unique vision because we see what creators want to do. Creators want to build games that can meet players on any screen. People play with their friends regardless of what other screen they're on. And the console is the core of the Xbox brand. There's no doubt. So like we will stay focused on making sure that console experience is awesome. But I know some people want to hold us up of just being a better green version of what the blue guys do. And I'm just going to say, like, there's not a win for Xbox in staying in the wake of somebody else. We have to go off and do our own thing with Game Pass, with
Está comparando ya los verdes con los azules y tal,
the stuff we do with xCloud,
que tienen que hacer a ellos su propio camino.
and the way we build our games. Sorry, I was a little long-winded.
No, that was perfect. And unfortunately, we do have to say goodbye to you, Phil. I know that we have a hard out here, but
Bueno, esto ya lo podemos terminar. Ha sido más o menos todo lo que ha dicho. Ha dado grandísimos titulares, cosas realmente interesantísimas, como lo del Hellblade 2, Forza, Starfield para este año, lo de que van a trabajar para los 60 frames en Starfield, y bueno, toda la autocrítica que ha hecho ferozmente hacia el equipo de Arkane Austin, sobre todo lo que es la manera de organizarse de Bethesda, que ya sabéis que es una compañía que han comprado hace poco y que de esto aprenderán mucho. Es decir, bueno, ya cada vez que venga un estudio que acabamos de comprar, que aprendan estas cosas. Sí que es cierto que se habían un poco mal acostumbrado al buen hacer de otros, como por ejemplo Double Fine, como por ejemplo, sobre todo y ante todo, Obsidian. Obsidian es que lo han hecho todo perfecto. O sea, lo del Grounded le ha salido de escándalo, lo del Pentiment le está saliendo de escándalo y sospecho que la Bowed le va a salir de escándalo. Entonces, ahí está un poquillo el punto, ¿no? Ahí está el truco, o sea, todos no lo van a hacer igual de bien. Y se tiene que comunicar eso sin miedo, sin nada. Necesitamos ayuda, no vamos a llegar a tiempo, necesitamos a alguien más que esté preparado para esto, para hacer las cosas y tal. Y eso es lo que ha fallado ahí dentro. Y sobre todo que al parecer a Phil Spencer no le han comunicado bien las cosas, ¿no? Es lo que decía Phil Spencer a lo largo de esta entrevista, que le da especial frustración y le da especial rabia que sean ellos los mismos los que se estén pegando el tiro en el pie con una mala comunicación, con una confusión, con lo que sea. Bueno, esta es la verdadera entrevista entera de Phil Spencer, que ha dicho cosas interesantísimas y que poco a poco iremos desglosando, pero todos esos titulares absolutamente aberrantes que se están dando hoy, no le hagáis mucho caso, porque no son así, no ha dicho taxativamente que va a lanzar un videojuego AAA cada trimestre, no, sino que ya está empezando a ver que ya la maquinaria por fin está llegando hasta ese punto en el que se van a acelerar ese lanzamiento de videojuegos realmente de calidad y realmente importantes, ¿no?, dentro de Microsoft, y que comprende perfectamente el sentir de la comunidad, que es perfectamente normal, ¿no? Y que aprenderán del pasado Xbox Showcase. Para este Xbox Showcase veremos cómo han aprendido la lección. Bueno, que vosotros estáis muy bien, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí, muchas gracias por comprar desde Instant Gaming, desde la descripción de mi vídeo, muchas gracias a mi canal secundario El Mundo de Sassel, y muchas gracias por seguir el Instagram y el OnlyFans de Marialey. Que vosotros estáis muy bien, un abrazo muy grande, viva Xbox, viva Phil Spencer. Yo estoy muy a gusto, muy contento con todo lo que es el Game Pass. Yo estoy muy contento con el Redfall, me está encantando como videojuego, pero por supuesto que es una lástima todo lo que está pasando alrededor, y una lástima que un videojuego con tanto potencial se tiene que ver emponzoñado por todo este drama, ¿no? Pero bueno, si sirve para aprender y para mejorar todo lo de Microsoft, bienvenido sea, por supuesto. También todo hay que enfocarlo en el contexto de la enorme presión y compra de Activision Blizzard, todo lo que se ha organizado alrededor y que Microsoft se ha tenido que volcar especialmente en ello. Y Redfall el principal afectado por todo este proceso. Que vosotros estéis, el primer lanzamiento. Que vosotros estéis muy bien, un abrazo muy grande y ya nos vemos. Hasta luego.